This is Chicago. At the dawn of the 21st century, Chicago's media was dominated by a handful of major corporations. But a resistance movement arose to free Chicago's media from their clutches. One player in this movement is the Chicago Independent Media Center and its TV show, Chicago Independent Television. The Independent Media Center is a worldwide network of grassroots correspondents committed to using the tools of the media for promoting social and economic justice. You are watching this month's dispatch from the Chicago Independent Media Center.
Welcome to Chicago Independent Television, a collection of progressive video reports by grassroots video workers produced free from corporate or commercial support or influence. I'm your host, Jessica Dodd. In this episode, we'll learn about a Chicago group raising serious questions about the Chicago bid for the 2016 Summer Olympics. We'll also see two segments about the aftermath of the police crackdown against activists outside the 2008 Republican National Convention. And we'll view a protest organized by peace activists at this year's Chicago Air and Water Show. Stay with us.
Mr. Bishop, I want to use this picture on the front page of our next issue.
Oh, come now, Nancy. We can't print a picture like that. Paper is read by people all over the city. Just think what a picture like that would do to the reputation of our newspaper.
I don't think we should hide things just because they're unpleasant. How do we stop things like this if we don't let the people know they're happening?
Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. Chicago is a finalist for hosting the 2016 Summer Olympics. However, there has been widespread public criticism of Chicago's Olympic bid. Here's a segment about one grassroots Chicago group which raised serious questions about the Olympics using a series of fun activities.
In winter 2009, the City of Chicago and a not-for-profit organization called Chicago 2016, backed by PR firm Hill & Knowlton, submitted an official bid to the International Olympic Committee for Chicago to host the 2016 Olympic Games. Chicago 2016 claimed that over 80% of the city's residents approved of the bid. They didn't. So over 4 consecutive Saturdays in the middle of a bitterly cold winter, a group of Chicagoans created a series of competitive events to prove it. The Winter 2009 Olympic Games engaged Chicago residents in active dialogue, extremely active dialogue, about the 2016 Olympic bid. All games were free, most games were all ages. The Olympics includes real sports, fake sports, and things that aren't sports at all, and aims to present various differing ways people make decisions together. The Olympics looks at highly organized, internationally recognized, massively marketed, thoroughly branded, and extremely expensive sporting events convened without popular vote and asks, shouldn't city residents have the right to decide what they do with public spaces and public funds? The Olympic legacy dates back to its founding in 2009 by Anne Elizabeth Moore and is headed by the Olympic Organizing Committee, who's tasked with finding sponsors for each game, community organizations with a stake in the 2016 Olympic bid. Incubate, the Institute for Community Understanding Between Art and the Everyday, a research institute dedicated to challenging how current infrastructures affect artistic production and Moore's collaborators in the UOC, sponsored the first day of games. Inspired by the recent plundering of arts funding by the London 2012 Committee, this Day of Games aimed to raise questions about the impact of the Olympic Games on cultural production communities in host cities. The outdoor portion of the Indoor-Outdoor Games, the second event in the 2009 Winter Olympiad, was held at Washington Park, where the Chicago 2016 Committee intended to build an Olympic stadium. They would also need to build expensive new temporary housing facilities for athletes and tourists, but they didn't explain which buildings in the neighborhood would have to be torn down to make room. Sponsored by the Chicago Working Group on Extreme Inequality, the Indoor-Outdoor Games attracted sports fans, art students, activists, young people, and neighborhood residents to the doomed park to play kickball in the snow. Outdoor running, fashion, and spectating competitions were also convened before the competition moved indoors. The live-action role-play family potluck dinner used a 20-sided die, food, 7 performers, and a family dinner setting to discuss the impact of the 2016 Games on Chicago, among other things. Quimby's Bookstore was the official intellectual sponsor of the Olympic Games. Founded in 1991, the independent bookstore is a Wicker Park Bucktown tradition and a national testament to the vitality of democracy. In advance of the Intellectual Games Spelling Bee, the Olympics Organizing Committee made a public call for Chicago 2016 to submit the bid to the city for a vote in advance of its submission to the International Olympics Committee. This request was ignored. The final day's emotional games took place on February 14, 2009, at Community Art Space No Coast in Pilsen. Under the theme Torture Breaks Our Hearts, the emotional games were sponsored by TAMS Year 10 and the Campaign to End the Death Penalty. They were introduced by Stanley Howard in a telephone call from prison. Between the 1970s and 1990s, former Chicago Police Commander John Burge and detectives under his command brutally tortured over 100 African American arrestees on the South Side with electrical shocks to their ears, lips, or genitals, through beatings with telephone books and rubber hoses, by plastic bag suffocation, and in mock executions. These acts are a violation of criminal and constitutional rights and have been condemned by the United Nations Committee Against Torture, but at least 24 people still languish behind bars based on unreliable confessions given under torture. None of the police officers involved have been prosecuted. In the past 20 years, the Olympics has displaced over 2 million low-income residents from their homes and left several cities in massive debt. Summer Games in Atlanta 1996 allowed for city-sanctioned racism when tickets with checkboxes listing male, African American, and homeless were pre-printed for police officers. The arrested were often placed on buses and dropped outside the city's borders. Chicago's own history with city-sanctioned racism, police torture, and the displacement of low-income residents deeply concerned the Olympics Organizing Committee, especially after spending a month planning events with and getting to know our neighbors. The events were 7 years away, but already landowners were seeing corrupt land-grabbing practices, and residents were being threatened with punishment if they spoke against the Olympics. Chicago 2016 members flooded neighborhood meetings to monitor and control the debate, while signing secret deals with the Chicago Park District for the use of public land. A new TIF was created in Bronzeville, one of the proposed Olympic sites. Mayor Daley's controversial funding initiative that siphons off tax money for special projects meant that neighborhood would pay higher rates to cover the cost of the 2016 Olympic Games. Still, Daley and Chicago 2016 continued to claim that the Games would not be paid for with public funds. In response to this obfuscation and the threat of overspending, the Olympics created a transparent financial system and forced all judges to submit to the same tests of skill as competitors had in an effort to create a new model for giant sporty mega events. The $375 Winter 2009 Olympics budget was entirely funded by small donations and created through group participation. Over 60 people walked away with Winter 2009 Olympic medals during the month of Games. By closing ceremonies, 78% of residents in a Chicago Tribune online poll had voted no to hosting the Olympic Games in 2016.
You're watching Chicago Independent Television.
I see the soul of a nation. Must be true because I've seen it on TV.
Does AT&T hate freedom? Let's find out.
Well, AT&T censored Pearl Jam, who criticized George W. Bush in an AT&T broadcast of Lollapalooza. So yes.
There you have it. Clear evidence that AT&T hates freedom. Help protect internet freedom. Visit these websites to learn more and get involved. AT&T, your world, delivered for a price.